Alright, what's going on guys? It's Apoqsi, and today I want to talk about Fallout New Vegas 2. Something I am sure plenty of you have heard come up over the last 2 weeks, thanks to a rumor stirred up by the notorious Jeff Grubb. And I wanted to chat about the validity of this comment, whether this game could become a reality, some things that were taken too literally by some people, and when we could expect this so-called Fallout New Vegas 2 if it's actually real. Now, for those of you out of the loop, Jeff Grubb dropped a few atomic bombs on a recent episode of his paid show, Grubb Snacks, during which he made a few statements in regards to Fallout New Vegas 2, Obsidian, and Microsoft. For those of you that have forgotten, Microsoft now owns both Bethesda and Obsidian, meaning that Obsidian working on the Fallout IP would be a lot easier now. So here's what Jeff Grubb had to say. This is very early, but people have begun to have talks and say these words in sentences. And those words are Obsidian and New Vegas 2. We're talking years and years away. There's at least an interest in conversations happening about making something like that actually a reality. A lot of people at Microsoft think that this could work, and there's a lot of interest to make it happen. So we finally have some meaningful rumblings that Microsoft is looking into Obsidian developing a follow-up to the highly acclaimed Fallout New Vegas, which is quite exciting news, but this is not a confirmation that it's going to happen by any means. But for those of you that are worried, Jeff Grubb is very reliable with his information, and this seemed like a pretty concrete statement from him. Obviously, things aren't set in stone. They never are in the games industry, especially given how this is just an idea being tossed around at this time. But I think Obsidian working on a new spin-off Fallout game is pretty much a given, especially with their history with Fallout New Vegas, some major big-time Fallout developers still working there, their specialty being open-world RPGs, their stated plans for the future being under the same Microsoft umbrella as Bethesda, and Bethesda Game Studios being focused on other IPs right now. In all honesty, I think it would be more surprising if we didn't see a Fallout game from Obsidian in the future. And Obsidian has a long history with Fallout, not just thanks to Fallout New Vegas and a handful of well-known developers that worked on that game, but also developers that used to work at Interplay during the original Fallout days. And Obsidian's desire to work on a new Fallout game hasn't seemed to die off either. Back in 2013, following the release of Fallout New Vegas, Obsidian CEO Fergus Urquhart shared interest in creating a sequel for Fallout New Vegas, including some details on how they'd go about it. Oh, we'd love to do a Fallout New Vegas 2. It would be awesome. If I think of going from Fallout 1 to Fallout 2, we tried to associate the two areas somewhat closely. It wasn't just, oh, we're going to do this 2,000 miles from here. So I think if we were to do Fallout New Vegas 2, or just a new Fallout, we would probably separate it from what the internal team at Bethesda is doing. We'd keep it on the West Coast because we're West Coast people. They're East Coast, so it makes sense. Now, while that was some time ago, they have frequently brought up Fallout and responded to Fallout-related questions over the years all across social media. And when questioned if Fallout New Vegas 2 was possible after the Bethesda acquisition, they responded with a shrug emoji. Obviously, this was early after the acquisition was announced, but they didn't deny it this time, like they had previously done in 2018. That brings us to now, when Jeff Grubb has confirmed that they're interested in making it happen, which isn't just great news for fans of specifically Fallout New Vegas, but fans of Fallout as a whole. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, Bethesda Game Studios has their hands full right now with active development on Fallout 76 content updates, which seems to actually be decreasing based on the recent roadmap, Starfield, which is releasing later this year, which is still insane to think about, and the Elder Scrolls 6, which is more than likely not releasing until at least 2025, which I think is still too hopeful. I'd say 2026 is more on point. This would follow the pattern of past BGS releases, and I think the only thing that would change that is if they are doing parallel development. But if we go based off of their previous pattern, that would mean a Fallout 5 from Bethesda Game Studios wouldn't release until around 2029 or later. And if that were the case, that would be way too long for the franchise to stay dormant, as The Elder Scrolls at least has ESO, which is one of the most successful MMOs of all time. Fallout has Fallout 76, which for most was a flop for the franchise, and like I suggested earlier, is already looking to be cutting back on new content this year. It has a strong, smaller player base, and it's definitely improved since launch, but it just isn't widely loved by the Fallout community. So for most, that would mean about a 15-year gap from Fallout 4 to Fallout 5. Not only is it unwise to leave the franchise dormant, but it also makes no sense for Microsoft. Microsoft has a ton of talented studios under their wing now that would be a pretty good fit for developing a spin-off Fallout title. Obsidian being one of them. But another example would be in Exile. They will also just want to capitalize on their new massive IP. Fallout isn't something I see Microsoft just letting rest for the next decade, so I expect they want to release a new Fallout game as soon as possible. And I don't think they're going to wait for the timeline that Bethesda Game Studios has for developing Fallout 5. And then there's also the Fallout TV series that's in the works with Amazon and the directors of Westworld, which just finished casting Walton Goggins as lead role, giving them another reason to want to push something out Fallout related. Of course, they could just do something like a remake for Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas, but why not both? So I think the most important question is, would Obsidian be capable of developing a Fallout game with their busy project lineup? And if so, when? So for those of you that don't know, Obsidian is reportedly planning to release a new game every year until 2028. This information comes from Jez Gordon, who I'm sure many of you are aware of, just like Jeff Grubb. And alongside the fact that Obsidian is reportedly planning to release a new game every year until 2028, he also laid out some of the details for the plans. As according to Gordon, Grounded 1.0 is the planned release for 2022, and Avowed is planned for release in 2023. There are two other games we know they're currently working on, which could take up their 2024 and 2025 slots. That being Josh Sawyer's project, which is rumored to be a no-combat murder mystery RPG, and then we have The Outer Worlds 2. So with those assumed dates, that would mean a sequel to Fallout New Vegas would likely be 2025 at the earliest. But I feel like it would be even further out in 2026 or 2027, depending on the development pattern from Obsidian. If their plan is to do something like a small release, big release, small release, and so on, then we could end up seeing Grounded 1.0 in 2022, Avowed in 2023, Josh Sawyer's project in 2024, assuming it's a smaller scale RPG project, The Outer Worlds 2 in 2025, another smaller project, potentially even something like a New Vegas remake in 2026, and a Fallout New Vegas sequel in 2027, which is still a long ways away. Now, keep in mind, with resources from Microsoft, not all of their projects have to be worked on all by their lonesome. There are plenty of studios in the Microsoft family that could support if necessary. Now, something I feel I should address about this info from Jeff Grubb, as I've been seeing a lot in regards to this, is criticism over the name Fallout New Vegas 2, with some even suggesting that him using that name alone confirms all of this is just a lie. So I just want to clarify that I don't think that is what the game would be called. I think Fallout New Vegas 2 is more or less being used as a catchy name for SEO reasons. Saying Fallout New Vegas 2 is a lot more recognizable and eye-catching than something along the lines of New Obsidian Fallout game. More people will recognize Fallout New Vegas 2 than the correlation of Obsidian and Fallout. And while a direct sequel could definitely be cool, as we've never seen that done for a Fallout before, I think it will just be another spin-off game that takes place somewhere on the East Coast, potentially even close to the Mojave. But in my opinion, I think either option would work. So is Fallout New Vegas 2 real? The answer is yes and no. I think another Obsidian Fallout game is a given, and it seems like Microsoft and Obsidian and potentially even Bethesda are looking into the idea. But I don't necessarily think that the game will be called Fallout New Vegas 2, and I don't think it will be set in the Mojave. Obsidian has shown interest for the last decade, Microsoft will want to take advantage of the Fallout IP, and Bethesda Game Studios is occupied with Starfield and The Elder Scrolls 6. It would make sense to at least humor the idea and give Obsidian another shot at the Fallout IP with a full AAA budget and timeline. And I think a Fallout game by Obsidian has a load of potential, and while it's not the exact same studio that put out Fallout New Vegas, it still has a load of amazing talent, some big names that have worked on the Fallout IP in the past, and even more potential now that they have the backing of Microsoft. Now, while I'm not going to do a deep dive on Jeff Grubb's reliability in this video, I do want to run through a few things related to Microsoft, Obsidian, and Bethesda that he has gotten right, just so you have an idea of why people are taking this seriously. Let's just say he has a pretty good track record other than with Elden Ring reveal dates. He also seems to have a much greater insight into Xbox and Nintendo over PlayStation, which helps tremendously in this situation. So I first started following him with his coverage for Summer Game Fest 2020, which he covered very accurately and updated it constantly with new information. But since he has been very accurate in regards to info on Xbox Game Studios and exclusive titles, such as Fable, Perfect Dark, Forza Horizon 5, and Age of Empires 4. He's also warned about Xbox events not being big or not including anticipated titles such as Gears 6, Everwild, Hellblade 2, and Elden Ring, which were often counters to other leaks with him being right. He also leaked an exact event date for Xbox E3 2021, Xbox Live Gold being removed from free-to-play games between April 20th and 25th, Yakuza 7 heading to Game Pass, and that Microsoft would put out a commitment to PC blog post, which he notified everyone of a week beforehand. As for Bethesda related, he accurately leaked that there would be a Bethesda Roundtable event that would follow the acquisition closing, which he later gave an exact date for. He also accurately stated that Starfield would be an Xbox console exclusive, also previously stated we would see gameplay snippets for Starfield at the E3 event that it was showcased, which was half true, dependent on your definition of gameplay, as all the footage was in-game, it just wasn't what you would necessarily call gameplay. He had also corrected his previous speculation of a 2021 release to confirm that the game would launch in 2022, even before Jason Schreier put out the 2022 date. He has also claimed to have knowledge on titles such as The Outer Worlds 2 before announcement, but doesn't always like to spoil the surprise. Of course, he's just one man, and the info he received could be wrong. But even if that's the case, I'd say it's safe to expect a new Fallout title from Obsidian at some point in the future. It won't be anytime soon, but I think everyone involved would like to see this happen. With that said, I'd love to know your thoughts on Obsidian making a new Fallout game. Would you want a direct sequel, that being Fallout New Vegas 2, or would you like to see something new on the West Coast? Let me know down in the comment section below. But that's it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please smack that like button down below, subscribe, join the good fight if you haven't already, and ring that bell icon to stay updated in all of my future videos. It'd be super greatly appreciated as always. And until next time, this is Apoqsi signing off.